Hello, and welcome to our reading of The Hobbit. Nanner wants more honey to dip her apple in, but I think she has enough for now, so we'll start reading and see how it goes. We are in the chapter Riddles in the Dark. It's quite a long time since we've recorded an episode of The Hobbit, but we'll hop right in. And if you need a refresher, then there are old episodes in this playlist on YouTube. We're actually out. For some reason, gum means banana. Who would have guessed? Banana. Eat your apple. Actually, Gollum lived on a slimy island of rock in the middle of the lake. He was watching Bilbo, now from the distance, with his pale eyes like telescopes. Bilbo could not see him, but he was wondering a lot about Bilbo, for he could see that he was no goblin at all. Gollum got into his boat and shot off from the island, while Bilbo was sitting on the brink altogether flummoxed and at the end of his way and his wits. Suddenly up came Gollum, and whispered and hissed. "Bless us and splash us, my precious." Precious! I guess it's a choice feast. At least a tasty morsel it'll make us, Gollum. And when he said Gollum, he made a terrible... Gollum, yeah. A terrible swallowing noise in his throat. That is how he got his name, though he always called himself my precious. The Hobbit jumped nearly out of his skin when the hiss came in his ear, and he suddenly saw the pale eyes sticking out at him. "Who are you?" he said, thrusting his dagger in front of him. "What is he, my precious?" whispered Gollum, who always spoke to himself, through never having anyone else to speak to. This is what he had come to find out, for he was not really very hungry at the moment, only curious. Otherwise he would have grabbed first and whispered afterwards. "I am Mr. Bilbo Baggins. I have lost the dwarves, and I have lost the wizard, and I don't know where I am, and I don't want to know, if only I can get away." "What's he got in his handses?" said Gollum, looking... Handses! Gollum is not very good with the grammar. Looking at the sword, which she did not quite like. "A sword, a blade, which came out of Gondolin," said Gollum, and became quite polite. "Perhaps we can sit here and chat with it a bit, see my precious." Oh, are you seeing something exciting outside? Oh. This... Oh, it's a bird that says quack quack that's coming? Is that what you're saying? I don't think it's a quack quack, but well, maybe it's a goose. Some geese might be out or flying. I guess they say a sort of quack. Yeah, perhaps we sit here and chat with it a bit, see my precious. It likes riddles, perhaps it does it? He was anxious to appear friendly, at any rate for the moment, and until he found out more about the sword and the Hobbit, whether he was quite alone really, whether he was good to eat, and whether Gollum was really hungry. Riddles were all he could think of. Asking them, and sometimes guessing them, had been the only game he had ever played with other funny creatures sitting in their holes in the long, long ago, before he lost all his friends and was driven away alone and crept down into the dark under the mountains. You want more juice? Okay. Small juice break. Brother down between. Alex is sitting in my lap while we're doing this, and Anna is currently eating her yogurt, awaiting more juice. I'll have a sip.
Awaiting juice?
There, good for the throat. Oh, now you got a lot, Anna.
What?
A lot.
What?
Yeah, can you finish it? You probably can. Brother can sit on my lap for now. Maybe he'll go back in his chair. Bit too small for the chair yet. He's kind of sliding in it. So he doesn't have to sit there for too long.
Oh, it's his hair.
Oh,
Hair.
does he have funny hair? He doesn't have very much hair. Wait. Okay.
Hey, brother.
Yeah, he had been guessing riddles before before he lost all his friends and was driven down under the dark mountains. Very well, said Bilbo, who was anxious to agree until he found out more about the creature, whether he was quite alone, whether he was fierce or hungry, and whether he was friends with the goblins. You ask first, he said, because he had not had time to think of a riddle. So Gollum hissed, "What has roots as nobody sees, is taller than trees, up, up it goes, and yet never grows." Easy, said Bilbo. Mountain, I suppose. Does it guess easy? It must have a competition with us, my precious. If Precious asks, and it doesn't answer, we eats it, my precious. If it asks us, and we doesn't answer, then we does what it wants, eh? We show it the way out, yes? Yeah, you like your apple? Yeah. You want more honey? Honey? Okay, you can get a honey refill. A lot of breaks in the reading here, but I guess we have to keep breakfast coming. I should just have the honey jar sitting over here, probably. It's easier. Honey apple, I guess that's kind of a thing. Or is it just some weird invention of Nanner's? Just dipping her pieces of apple in honey. I imagine that's rather good. I don't think that's the weirdest thing she has ever made. It's not like pickles dipped in yogurt, which is another delicacy of hers. Yes. We show it the way out. Yes. All right, said Bilbo, not daring to disagree and nearly bursting his brain to think of riddles that could save him from being eaten. 30 white horses on a red hill. First they champ, then they stamp, then they stand still. That was all he could think of to ask. The idea of eating was rather on his mind. It was rather an old one, too, and Gollum knew the answer, as well as you do. Chestnuts, chestnuts, he hissed. Teeth, teeth.
Teeth?
Yeah, my precious. But we have only 6. Then he asked his second. Voiceless it cries, wingless flutters, toothless bites, mouthless mutters. Half a moment, cried Bilbo, who was still thinking uncomfortably about eating. Fortunately, he had once heard something rather like this before, and getting his wits back... I skipped a page. Getting his wits back... He thought of the answer. Wind! Wind, of course, he said. And he was so pleased that he made up one on the spot. This'll puzzle the nasty little underground creature, he thought.
What's your color?
An eye in a blue face saw an eye in a green face. That eye is like to this eye, said the first eye, but in low place, not in high place. said Gollum.
That's it?
Yeah, he had been underground a long, long time and was forgetting this sort of thing. But just as Bilbo was beginning to hope that the wrench would not be able to answer, Gollum brought up memories of ages and ages and ages before, when he lived with his grandmother in a hole in the bank by a river. "Sss, my precious," he said. "Sun, on the daisies it means. It does. But these ordinary, above-ground, everyday sort of riddles were tiring for him. Also, they reminded him of days when he had been less lonely and sneaky and nasty, and that put him out of temper. What is more, they made him hungry. So this time he tried something a bit more difficult and more unpleasant. It cannot be seen, cannot be felt, cannot be heard, cannot be smelled. It lies behind stars and under hills, and empty holes it fills. It comes first and follows after, ends life, kills laughter." Unfortunately for Gollum, Bilbo had heard that sort of thing before, and the answer was all around him anyway. "Dark," he said, without even scratching his head and putting on his thinking cap. "A box without hinges, key or lid, yet golden treasure inside it hid." He asked to gain time until he could think of a really hard one. This he thought a dreadfully easy chestnut, though he had not asked it in the usual words. But it proved a nasty poser for Gollum. He hissed to himself, and still he did not answer. He whispered and spluttered. After some while, Bilbo became impatient. "Well, what is it?" he said. "The answer's not a kettle boiling over, as you seem to think from the noises you're making." "Give us a chance, let it give us a chance, my precious." "Well," said Bilbo, after giving him a long chance, "what about your guess?" But suddenly Gollum remembered thieving some nests long ago, and sitting under the river bank teaching his grandmother to suck "Exes!" he hissed. "Exes it is!"
Eggs?
Then he asked, "Alive without breath, as cold as death, never thirsty, ever drinking, all in mail, never clinking." He also in his turn thought this was a dreadfully easy one, because he was always thinking of the answer, but he could not remember anything better at the moment. He was so flustered by the egg question. All the same, it was a poser for poor Bilbo, who never had anything to do with water if he could help it. I imagine you know the answer, of course, or can guess it, as easy as winking, since you're sitting comfortably at home and have not the danger of being eaten to disturb your thinking. Bilbo sat and cleared his throat once or twice, but no answer came. After a while, Gollum began to hiss with pleasure to himself. "Is it nice, my precious? Is it juicy? Is it scrumptiously crushable?" He began to peer at Bilbo out of the darkness. "Half a moment," said the Hobbit, shivering. "I gave you a good long chance just now." "It must make haste, haste," said Gollum, beginning to climb out of his boat onto the shore to get at Bilbo. But when he put his long, webby foot in the water, a fish jumped out of fright and fell on Bilbo's toes. "Oh, another creation, juice in the yogurt." Okay, I guess we have to stop reading soon. Let's try to get to a good point to stop first, though.
Apple pepper?
Oh, apple in there too? All right.
Apple.
"Ugh," he said. "It is cold and clammy," and so he guessed. "Fish! Fish!" he cried.
A fish?
"It's a fish!" Yes, fish was the answer to the riddle. Gollum was dreadfully disappointed, but Bilbo asked another riddle so quick as ever he could, so that Gollum had to get back into his boat and think. "No legs, lay on one leg. 2 legs, sat near on 3 legs. 4 legs, got some." It was not really the right time for this riddle, but Bilbo was in a hurry. Gollum might have had some trouble guessing it if he had asked it another time. As it was, talking of fish, No legs was not so very difficult, and after that, the rest was easy. Fish on a little table, man at table, sitting on a stool, and cat has the bones. That, of course, is the answer, and Gollum soon gave it. Then he thought the time had come to ask something hard and horrible. This is what he said. This thing all things devours, birds, beasts, trees, and flowers. Gnaws iron, bites steel, grinds hard stones to meal, slays kings, ruins towns, and beats high mountains down. Poor Bilbo sat in the dark, thinking of all the horrible things and all the giants and ogres he had ever heard told in the tales. But not one of them had done all these things. Yeah, you're making quite the mess, aren't you? He had a feeling that the answer was quite different and that he ought to know it, but he could not think of it. He began to get frightened, and that is bad for thinking. Gollum began to get out of his boat. He flapped into the water and paddled to the bank. Bilbo could see his eyes coming towards him. His tongue seemed to stick in his mouth. He wanted to shout out, "Give me more time, give me more time." But all that came out was a sudden squeal. Time! Time! Bilbo was saved by pure luck. For that, of course, was the answer. And Anna just spilled milk all over the table, so that is the perfect time to stop to clean up, and we will do the aftermath of Bilbo's timely answer. Ooh, see what I did there? Next time. You have spilled juice, and now you think it's time for a bath. Okay, we'll see what we can do about that. Stay tuned for next episode. Next time it's in Norwegian, European early modern history. But in not long, hopefully, we'll see what happens next to Bilbo and Gollum and the rest in Middle Earth. Say bye!